So in today's video, I'm talking about the 7 signs of codependent relationships and how to heal those one-sided relationships right at the beach. So if you're new, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. So let's talk about what is codependency. It's basically a relationship pattern where you focus on others at your own expense, and these relationships are based on an unhealthy dependency coupled with a lack of self-trust. Because you're looking to other people or external sources for your validation, support, and self-esteem. Because we don't know when we're codependent how to give those things to ourselves. So the one thing I want to tell you is you're not crazy. You have a big heart. You just don't know how to protect it with boundaries and with self-care. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what are some common signs of codependency, what are 7 signs of a codependent relationship, and what you can do to start healing those one-sided relationships. If you want a written copy of this free guide, it'll be in the description of this post, because there are journal prompts I'm going to also walk you through. So let's talk about some common signs of codependency. The first one is putting yourself last. This is a super easy one that most people relate to, because when you're in a relationship, you never take your turn. You want other people to be happy, but you don't really look at yourself for being happy. The next trait is you have a really hard time setting boundaries because you're afraid of the other person's reaction. So you don't do it. You stay quiet. You don't ask for what you want and need. And in fact, another symptom of codependency is that you don't know what you want or need because you're so good at knowing what other people want and need that you don't really know what you need. The next sign of codependency is attracting people who need rescuing or want to dominate you in the relationship. This is why we attract narcissistic people, alcoholic, people who tend to be more difficult, because the overgiver person tends to attract the overtaker. They're kind of a perfect dysfunctional match, but that's part of why codependent relationships are so challenging. Another sign of codependency is an inability to let go of people, places, and things, especially relationships. We hang on for dear life because we think they're our lifeline. I've done this several times in my recovery, and I will tell you, once you get to the point where you can actually let go, you're going to be able to have healthier relationships because you're going to be at choice. Another sign of codependency is relying too much on others for support and validation. You don't know how to fill yourself up and esteem yourself, so you're always looking to other people to do that for you, and that's what creates that unhealthy dependency. Another sign of codependency is worrying or obsessing about what other people think of you. And this is also because we struggle with low self-esteem. We want to make sure people like us because that's how we feel good. We don't feel good when people are mad at us or people are looking at us funny. We assume that they're upset at us even when they're not. And another sign of codependency is trying to control people, places, things, and outcomes, because that's how we feel safe. This typically goes back to childhood, where we didn't have control over our environment growing up, so we really want to have control in our adult relationships. Okay, so let's get to the 7 signs of a codependent relationship. The first one is when you start to go into a relationship, you get attached too quickly. You start to trust them, feel good about them, way before you actually know who the person is or their character. The next sign is being overly dependent on others for support and validation. I've already talked about that. There's an enmeshment where we kind of lose ourselves in our relationships. So another sign of codependent relationships is that there aren't healthy boundaries. You may feel uncomfortable saying no. You may do everything the other person says, or you might have rigid boundaries where you expect them to do exactly what you want them to do because control is your thing. The next sign of a codependent relationship is that the other person's needs or the relationship's needs are prioritized over your needs. So everything you're doing for the other person. You're doing to better the relationship, even if it hurts you. Another sign of a codependent relationship is having a high tolerance for abusive or toxic behavior. We put up with being disrespected, gaslighted, because we don't know how to stick up for ourselves. And in some ways, this goes back to childhood, where we're really familiar with being mistreated, even though we don't want to be, and we end up recreating that dysfunction in our adult relationships. Another sign of codependent relationships is that we avoid conflict because we'd rather please the other person than actually tell the person that they've hurt our feelings or crossed our boundary. And the last sign of a codependent relationship is when you start to give up your values and what's important to you for the sake of the other person or the relationship as a whole. You need to be aware of 5 core areas of codependency. One is our self-esteem, where we don't feel good about ourselves, or in some cases we feel better than others. Number 2 is boundaries. We don't set healthy boundaries, or we try to control people, places, and things. Number 3, issues of control or letting go. This is a core area in codependency recovery because we hold on for dear life in our relationships, and that's not healthy. The next core area in codependency is managing your emotions, because we're really good. I know for me as a codependent, I'm really good at knowing what other people feel. It took me a while to realize what I feel and to really shift that focus, because being hypersensitive to what other people are feeling and needing isn't always a strength. In fact, a lot of times it prevents us from taking care of ourselves because we're not aware of what we need, we're aware of what the other person needs. And the last core area of codependency is our relationships. We have to be willing to dissect what's healthy and what isn't and what needs to change. So in this free guide, if you've downloaded it already, I want you to write down what are the core areas that you need to focus on right now. And what I always recommend is start where you're most motivated. Because sometimes you might not be motivated to look at your self-esteem, but you might be more motivated to look at your relationships. That's totally fine. You always want to follow the motivation in your recovery because that's how you're going to stay engaged. The other journal prompt in this guide is I want you to think about what needs to change in your relationships. And usually when I ask people that question, they know. You know automatically what isn't working. Maybe you're not setting boundaries. Maybe you're not telling the truth. Maybe you're in a relationship that you really shouldn't be in anymore. Now, the last part of this guide is I talk about 3 action steps on how to heal codependent relationships. The first one is I want you to start asking for what you need and want in your relationship. Because if you're not doing that, you're never going to have a healthy balance of give and take. So I want you to pick the safest person to start with and just start asking for simple things. Even if it's picking the restaurant or the activity you're going to do, just start putting your wants and needs out there. Next action step I want you to take is I want you to start honoring and trusting your feelings no matter what. Because how you feel is going to dictate what's going on for you. Is somebody hurting your feelings? Is somebody crossing a boundary? What's going on? Because when I start to feel annoyed or sad or hurt, I have to follow that up. I can't just dismiss it and say, oh, I'm being too sensitive. Because there's a gem in there for you. And what I want you to do is I want you to explore what's upsetting you in the moment so that you can actually learn to take care of it. And the last action step for when you're starting codependency recovery is I want you to bring this up in your relationship, if it's safe, and just say something like, I noticed that we might have a codependent or one-sided relationship. But you can use terms like unhealthy or one-sided, or I noticed this relationship is more about you than it is me, or I noticed that we don't really have any boundaries between us or limits. I want you to name what your concern is in the relationship if you can and if it's safe enough. Because that response you get from that other person is going to tell you whether or not that relationship is salvageable. Now, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to go print out the guide for my 7 signs of codependent relationships and how to heal them. Thanks so much.